very scary.
Now, day 2 of our research bend. Okay? You went home, you got your topics yesterday. You went home, you started building background knowledge, right? We did these things. We did number 1 and 2. We previewed the text to look for repeating subtopics, repeating words. And we read the easy text first to build background knowledge, right? You remember? So I've got a surprise for you. Well, not a surprise, more like I want to remind you of something. I want to remind you of what you already know. Okay? Because you see all that stuff up there? To make the most of your nonfiction chapter books, like this. Remember these from Ben 1? So everything you learn about reading nonfiction chapter books, everything on that chart, everything in the checklist in your book, all of that can be applied to Ben 2 when you're reading articles. You understand what I mean? Tell the person next to you what I said. Ava, who's your partner? What are you reading? What's your topic? The list is right behind you on the board. Who's your partner? Okay, then you need to sit with them and talk to them. Thank you. So, in bed, what's Sejong say? What? That's right, but can anyone say that in another way? Mark? Kind of like this. Imagine. Does anyone play clarinet? So, Jan and Mark, when you play clarinet, is the fingering the same as saxophone?
No.
Is it or no?
Nobody knows.
Well,
I have to learn
what's that? Ethan?
you can use what's yamcha in English?
Umbrella? Sun umbrella?
Your sun umbrella is
In the rain? Okay, that works. So, imagine that everything you learned in Bend 1 is a sun umbrella. Wow. And Bend 2 is the rain. But what Ethan has taught us is that we can use the sun umbrella in the rain and it still works.
Yes.
It's a great example. Thank you, Ethan. I'm going to use that again. So I'm going to show you how some of these things we learned in Bend 1 apply to nonfiction articles. All right? So, Katie, what's the first thing we do? Orient, right? How do we do that? That's right. We look at the front page. Now, my article, not all of them have a front page, but we'll look at the title. What surrounds the title? Here you see the title right here in the middle. So for me, if I'm going to orient myself to the text, I'm going to look at this and ask questions. And I'm going to look at what's there. The battle over GMOs. So I'm thinking, there's a battle. There's not just an argument. There's a battle. So there are two sides, and they're really vicious. Right? They're strong and powerful. It's not like people. It's a battle. It's like companies, industries. And then it says, are GMOs the answer to feeding a hungry world or Frankenfoods like Frankenstein? You know what Frankenstein is?
The monster.
How was he made?
Dead part of the bomb.
The parts of dead people. were put together and he was brought back to life. So are GMOs frankenfoods that put the environment and us at risk? Okay? So as I'm doing this, I'm asking myself, can I detect the position of the author? And I'm thinking, right now I can't. Right, just reading this title, I can't figure out if the author is pro-GMO or anti-GMO. I can't figure it out. Okay, so I look at the title, then I look at these captions, and I see, okay, I ignore soda, because no one should ever drink soda, and we don't, right?
Yes, I don't drink.
We quit soda?
I drink water every day.
Good. Okay, so it says apples. Look at this. The U.S. government recently approved a genetically engineered apple that doesn't brown after being sliced or bruised. So it doesn't get brown. Like when you cut it open, if you leave it on the table for a half hour, it doesn't turn brown. Wow. I think that's pretty cool. That's right. Isn't that a good thing? That's a good response, right? So we're thinking about what's going to be in this article. It says cereals have genetically modified organisms. So it says corn and soy and sugar. Pizza, the cheese and pizza and meat can contain GMOs. And then 90% of corn is modified to fight off insects and survive herbicides sprayed to kill weeds. You know what weeds are? Right, weeds are like the plants that don't have any nutritional value, like we don't eat them, but they kill the other plants.
What plant?
Weeds. Weeds.
W-E-E-D? That's what my grandma
Yes,
calls it.
we use it as plural.
Isn't that
Weeds.
Isn't that a drug?
No.
Isn't that a what?
No. You'll see it growing in the sidewalk. Right? You see the guy, sometimes you see the guys on the street with the big tank on their back and they're spraying the ground. They're killing weeds. Right? So this corn, this corn is modified so that it doesn't die when it contacts that chemical. Right? So I'm orienting myself with the text. I look at the cover. When I get in here, I look at the picture. Right? The salmon. Yono. One of my favorite foods.
I thought that was tuna.
No, that's tuna. So a salmon, it says a salmon that's genetically modified to grow fast next to a regular salmon roughly the same age. So these two salmons are the same age, but one is twice as big. Pretty neat.
Small ones are more tasty.
Yeah, more flavor. I look here. Chipotle. It's a restaurant. They went GMO free last year. So I say, wait. So I thought everything was good so far. Like a bigger salmon in half the time means more people can eat. But here, why would Chipotle go GMO free? Right, I'm curious. Okay, so I'm looking at that. I'm also looking at these section headings. I don't think we know enough. A boon to farmers. What's a boon?
Burden?
Kind of like the opposite, like a bonus.
Oh.
Right? Like a bonus. So this would be talking about the benefits to farmers. Okay. So what I did, I oriented myself to the text. The next thing I'm going to do is read through, and I'm going to look for fascinating parts, for interesting details. And then I'm going to take those details, like they're ingredients, and mix them together, and see if I can discover a central idea. Right? That's my task. So you guys can read along with me. And as I read, I want you to take out your notebooks, and I want you to write down an interesting fact that you hear. Okay, so everybody should have a pen in hand. Does anyone need a pen?
Oh, too bad.
There's one pencil. Careful, it's sharp. And I have a pen here.
Oh, can we a middle switch? I like
No.
Okay.
There. You good?
Yeah, your band was pens and mechanical pencils.
Oh yeah.
Now, as I read, what are you going to write down, Lauren?
Interesting fact.
Interesting facts. Okay. So you listen to me. You can follow along up here if you like. Okay, I'll be reading this much. Thousands of people took to the streets recently in 400 cities worldwide. The cause of their anger, not oppressive governments, not unemployment or income inequality, but apples that don't brown when sliced, and corn that's bred to fight off insects. In short, GMOs, genetically modified organisms. In Los Angeles, protesters chanted, "Hell no, GMO!" In Strasbourg, France, demonstrators held a minute of silence. A minute of silence in front of the European Parliament. And in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, people accused GMO producers of bioterrorism. Write down a fact that jumped out at you quickly. Write it down. Write it down. Write it down. Write it down. Write it down.
Hell no. I wrote hell no.
What's up, everybody?
No. This is N.
Really? Me too. It's really annoying.
What is that? What is that?
Now, tell that interesting fact to your partner.
Whoa.
Apple doesn't get more. Corn does Michael
Shocked by the fact that thousands of people
Oh, he stresses me. It's like
were
they never
in the cities because
really
of
know
GMO
before.
culture.
That's
Personally, beneficial, non-beneficial. Already don't. Okay, laws, bananas have like this. Those are GMO. Genetic modified organisms.
What'd you write down? All right.
GMO.
Good. Back together. So, what I noticed you guys writing down was stuff about the language in there. Hell no GMO. And bioterrorism. Many of you wrote that down. Okay? And what I heard is, you wrote that because you're wondering why we get these strong responses for corn that fights off insects. Because if we have more corn, right, if farmers lose less of their crop, more people can eat. And hunger is a problem in the world, right? So you should be writing, you wrote this down because you have these questions in your head. Minute. Did you have a question? Or you want to share what you wrote?
I think why the people don't like it is if it doesn't rotten, maybe you can't leave it alone until it goes away. It doesn't rot.
Okay, so if it doesn't rot, then we'll get a larger crop. Is that what you mean?
No, but if it gets rotten, like bugs come and eat it,
Right.
but they won't eat it.
That's right. So if fewer of the crop is dying, fewer insects and pests come and eat that dying crop.
Not a good.
Right? So it seems like this is a good thing, but people are using this really strong language against it. Protesting in the street. A moment of silence. Right? So I got more questions. Got these details now. I still don't know. Do you guys have an idea about the position of the author? Are they pro-GMO or anti-GMO? What do you think? Anti? I'm feeling a bit like they're pro-GMO.
What?
Because the way they wrote this introduction. right?
Oh, yeah.
Because I sense a bit of like sarcasm. Like it's almost written that it's odd that people are protesting about genetically modified apples. Right? I think that's the message the author is conveying. But I'm not sure, right? See up there it says determine possible central ideas. And then later it says rethink central ideas. So I'm going to read a little more, and we're going to see if we can come up with a central idea, okay? So as I read, you can write more details. We're thinking about what the central idea of this article may be. So here we go. GMOs are organisms whose DNA has been combined with a gene from an unrelated species to produce a desired trait. Now, one thought that just ran through my head is, I'm glad I read that easy article yesterday, because this stuff makes sense to me now. But if I hadn't read that easy article, I wouldn't know what a lot of these words mean, right? So I'm thinking, I made a good choice in reading that other one first. Some crops are genetically modified to survive herbicide sprays that kill weeds. Others are engineered to be more nutritious. A pink pineapple awaiting U.S. government approval has the same antioxidant that makes tomatoes red and may help prevent cancer. In November, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved the first genetically modified animal, a salmon engineered to grow to market size, or the size where they can sell it, in about half the time as a regular salmon. Okay, so as I'm reading this, I'm thinking, this is all good stuff, right? I feel like the author is pro-GMO, right? Because they're sharing these really cool facts about new GMOs and how they're being used that would benefit our world. But GMOs have been very unpopular lately. Only 37% of Americans think they're safe, according to the Pew Research Center. McDonald's recently refused to use a new genetically modified potato that produces less of a cancer-causing chemical when fried. Chipotle, it's another restaurant, Chipotle dropped GMOs from its U.S. offerings. And General Mills, they make cereal, it's a cereal company, stopped using GMOs in Original Cheerios after a year-long campaign by environmentalists. So, what kind of central idea are we coming to?
GMOs are dangerous.
Tell your partner. Now, what I hear you say pretty much is that GMOs have a lot of potential, but there are some problems. Right? There are some things we don't know. All right. Now, if I were to continue reading this article, I'm going to use all of these things, all of these techniques and skills that I use to read the nonfiction chapter book. But this is an article. Right? So we're not going to finish this right now. We're not going to continue to go through all of these techniques and skills. Right? But the purpose of today's mini lesson is to show you that you follow the same path with a nonfiction article that you use when you read a nonfiction chapter book. Okay? So you guys are already almost experts. And I want you to do that work today as you read through your text sets. You think you can do that? Yeah? You feel good? Ready to go? Okay.